All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March Hatfield Museum and History Society program. I'm Larry Stevens, president of the Society, and I thank you for joining us tonight, both in person and on Facebook. I have just a few brief announcements before I get into the program. The next community program will be on Tuesday, May 31st, the day after Memorial Day, and the program will be the Hatfield Speedway. I presented this program on the Speedway 8 years ago, and it drew a record crowd, so help spread the word and plan to join us the day after Memorial Day. And for those of you here in person, if you could please help us by folding up the chairs at the end of the evening, that would be greatly appreciated. And please join me in thanking our refreshment committee for tonight, Debbie Stevens, Shirley Culp, Nancy France, and June Detweiler. Thank you, ladies. There's a lot of goodies over there, so make sure you hang around and enjoy some of those afterwards. All right, with that being said, we'll get into our program. Get the lights, Greg. Thank you. Okay. Tonight's program is titled This and That, an Eclectic Look at Hatfield History, Part 13. I started doing these This and That programs back in 2010 after realizing that there were a good number of nice old photos in the Society's collection that wouldn't quite fit in with any particular program, but they're still an interesting part of Hatfield's history. So I put those pictures together into a program and just called it This and That, an Eclectic Look at Hatfield History. So here is the 2022 edition of This and That. And I'd like to open tonight's presentation by talking a bit about Hatfield's bridges. Now, I don't think that generally we give too much notice or thought to our local bridges. That is until one of them gets closed, and then we all get a new appreciation for them. In the very early history of Hatfield, that is, in the early 1700s, there were no roads here in Hatfield, just a series of worn paths through the area. At first, as the first settlers traveled the area on these paths, when they came to a stream, they would simply cross through the water. That is, unless a recent storm had raised the water to an impassable level. And many of you will remember that in generations past, when talking about travel plans, the phrase, "if the good Lord's willing and the creek don't rise," was often added to the conversation. And this referred to the difficulties and uncertainty of travel in those early days of unpaved roads that forded creeks without the benefit of bridges. And we are all too aware that even with today's bridges, heavy rains could still make many roads impassable. Now, before I continue speaking on bridges, I thought I would talk a little bit about water. After all, water is the reason that almost all of the bridges I will talk about this evening are needed. So where does the water come from that flows through Hatfield streams? It's also not something that most people give much thought to. The water in Hatfield streams come from a combination of sources. Most comes from the sky as rain or snow. When precipitation falls on the land, some will seep into the ground, but most becomes runoff, which follows a downhill course on its journey towards the sea. Some of the water comes from natural ground springs. And in more recent history, some of the water that flows through Hatfield streams comes from the ground that we pump out of our homes' basements to keep them dry, and which often then flows into the stormwater system and then on into our streams. Most of that water is drained from Hatfield by way of a number of small streams. Here is an 1848 map of Hatfield showing the network of major streams through which Hatfield's water flows. Notice that some of the water that flows through Hatfield streams actually comes from Bucks County at the top of the map. It flows into Hatfield and meanders around a bit before flowing back into Bucks County. And there are also streams that originate in Lansdale Borough at the bottom right, and although not shown on this map, also from Franconia Township on the left. These streams all continue to flow through Hatfield, coming together to form the west branch of the Neshaminy Creek. The water will continue on into Bucks County at the top right of our map, where it will feed into the Neshaminy Creek. The waters of the Neshaminy Creek then meander through Bucks County and on to the Delaware River, flows down to the Delaware Bay, and then on out to the Atlantic Ocean. And as a kid, I was fascinated by the thought that if I put a toy boat in the creek here in Hatfield, that it would eventually find its way to the Atlantic Ocean, at least in theory anyway. Hatfield's first bridge was built around 1768 on the King's Highway, which was the earliest road through Hatfield. The King's Highway crossed over a tributary of the Neshaminy just north of what is now Calmer, near where Produce Junction now is. Unfortunately, we don't have any old photos of bridges at that crossing. This is one of two known covered bridges that once stood in Hatfield. Covered bridges serve the purpose of helping to protect the wooden structural members of the bridge from the weather. The cover also apparently helped to keep horses from being spooked by the waters underneath, and also provided a brief reprieve from harsh weather for the weary traveler. This bridge is identified as the Unionville Covered Bridge, located on the Bethlehem Pike, about 1/4 mile south of what is now Unionville Pike. It was built to cross over Beaver Creek, or Beaver Run as it was also known, a tributary of the Neshaminy. The creek starts in Hilltown Township and flows down through Hatfield, joining up with the Little Neshaminy near Treewigtown Road. And notice that the village near the bridge was known as Unionville back when this map was made in 1877. Here's another Unionville bridge photo. I talked briefly about this bridge in our last program and about how it was a bit of a mystery. The image was captured by Lansdale photographer John C. Bartholomew in the early 1900s, possibly around 1905. Did this bridge replace the Unionville Covered Bridge, or was it located somewhere else in the village? We just don't know. It's one of those mystery pictures that annoy me. A double-span stone arch bridge was built in 1850 on East Broad Street, where the old firehouse is. Here's a photo from around 1898 showing East Broad Street, and you can see the bridge there crossing over the creek. This photo is from our collection and is believed to be a Hatfield bridge, although we can't say for sure that it is a Hatfield bridge. I like to think that maybe it's an early photo of the Broad Street Bridge. Maybe or maybe not. Continuing downstream, this is a photo of the double-span East Lincoln Avenue stone arch bridge, which was built in 1900. This picture was taken just a few years after the bridge was built. The view is looking upstream or north towards Broad Street. It was built, of course, for horse and wagon traffic, but of course more recently has borne the weight of many cars, trucks, and tractor-trailers daily. All that traffic took its toll on the 120-year-old bridge, and sadly, it needed to be replaced just last year. Trains also need bridges, of course, to cross over water, and since this is the only photo we have of a train crossing the Hatfield Bridge, I thought I would throw it in here. This is an early 1900s picture postcard showing steam engine 403 crossing the railroad bridge located between Lincoln Avenue and Chestnut Street. An interesting side note, in the early 1900s, newspaper reports indicate that baptism services were frequently held in the creek at this railroad bridge. Not far from the railroad bridge, this is the little Chestnut Street Bridge, again looking upstream or north. It's hard to tell from this photo, taken around 1908, but it looks barely wide enough for a horse and wagon. The bridge was eventually upgraded to carry the heavier weight of automobile traffic, and around 1890 the bridge was deemed unsafe for vehicular traffic, and so it was closed. It was eventually reopened as a pedestrian bridge, which is what it is to this day. And a note of interest about this bridge, the stone bridge abutments seen in this photo are still in use today, although recent storms have taken their toll on them, and the borough is currently working with their engineer to come up with a solution to fix and preserve them. An 1893 newspaper article reports on the construction of a new bridge on East Vine Street, saying stones are being hauled to build the county bridge over the Little Neshaminy near South Hatfield. This June 1907 postcard shows the steel construction county bridge on Vine Street that was built in 1893. And another postcard of the East Vine Street Bridge, possibly taken in the fall of 1907. And it looks like there's a man there doing a little fishing in the Little Neshaminy on the left. In 1985, the 92-year-old narrow steel bridge was demolished and a new two-lane bridge built to replace it, officially opening in 1986. This early 1900s photo shows the East Orvilla Road Bridge, which was built in 1810. This stone arch bridge has two 20-foot long spans with an overall length of 100 feet. This is a photo of the Orvilla Road Bridge in 1992 after it sustained some heavy damage on one side after a vehicle accident. The bridge was suddenly closed in March 2015 after an inspection uncovered cracks and structural damage. For more than a year, traffic was detoured as contractors strengthened and restored the old stone bridge, which reopened in May of 2016. No doubt one of the earlier bridges in Hatfield was the one on the County Line Road that crosses the west branch of the Neshaminy Creek. This photo shows Hatfield's second known covered bridge, the County Line Road Bridge. This photo of the County Line Road covered bridge is dated 1936 and was possibly taken shortly before the bridge was replaced. And here's another 1936 photo of the County Line Road covered bridge. Some of you long-timers may remember the steel construction Schwab Road Bridge. When this photo was taken in February 1979, the Schwab Road Bridge had been closed for some time. While nearby residents enjoyed having the bridge closed and wanted it to stay that way, the township and county were committed to reopening it. After a delay to obtain funding for the reconstruction project, the bridge was finally replaced and reopened. There are, of course, a number of smaller bridges in Hatfield, but there is one small bridge that is a true hidden gem that few people even know about. This little-known historic stone single-arch bridge is now on private land, but at one time it was on the main connector road from Unionville Pike to Township Line Road. Here's a bit of history on the roads in this part of Hatfield Township. The Unionville Road, as it was called before it was turnpiked, was officially opened in 1872, although it did exist since before 1848. Bergie Road was opened from Cowpath Road to Bethlehem Pike back in 1824. And the Township Line Road between Hatfield and Franconia Townships also predates 1848. No other roads were in this area. The Southern Hatfield Turnpike, the road there near the bottom, wasn't opened until 1893. But around 1885, a road was built that connected the Unionville Road with the Township Line Road. And between Bergie Road and Township Line Road was a small creek, and so a small stone arch bridge was built to cross it. Part of this old road still exists as the entrance road from Berge Road to the former Standard Press Steel building. The bridge has been reinforced some over the years since this photo was taken, and I haven't ventured back to see it recently myself, but I understand that it does still exist. The last Hatfield Bridge that I want to mention is one that wasn't used by horses or automobiles, and it wasn't built to cross over water. It is the old trolley bridge, also known as Gayman's Trestle, that connects Hatfield Township to Franconia Township over the Township Line Road. The terrain in that area makes quite a dip, so the trolley company constructed this bridge to cross over it. In this photo, you can see the Township Line Road far beneath the trolley bridge. Here's another picture of the trolley bridge with Township Line Road far below. And notice the concrete bridge abutments on the right side of the photo. The trolley line was discontinued back in 1951, but over 70 years later, both bridge abutments are still out there on both sides of Township Line Road, relics of history from the glory days of the trolley that have survived. So there you go, more than you ever wanted to know about Hatfield's bridges and streams. You may have heard or read back in January about this accident that occurred in Danville, Pennsylvania, involving a dump truck and a truck carrying a load of monkeys bound for a research lab. Reportedly, at least 3 monkeys got loose and went missing for a time. A similar incident occurred in our area back in 1957, when 49 wild monkeys escaped from the Merck Sharpen Dome facility in Upper Gwynedd. This is a newspaper photo from August 1957 showing a Merck Sharpen Dome laboratory employee with 2 of the monkeys that escaped from the facility. He is holding one live monkey captive while he examines one which had been shot dead. One of these stray monkeys was seen in the front yard of Mrs. Harold Bonnekemper's house on Coffle Road, a distance of about 6 miles from the plant. Police were called to the Bonnekemper residence, but the monkey had vanished by the time that they arrived. There are 3 women who have a place in Hatfield's history simply for being born. The Swartley identical triplets. I briefly mentioned the infamous Swartley triplets in our last program in January, so I thought that tonight I would give you a more detailed account of their place in Hatfield's history. Hatfield's Enos and Irene Swartley were married around 1890, and in 1891 they had their first child, a girl, followed by a son and then another girl. In 1901, the Swartleys discovered that they would again be growing their family. And on April 19, 1902, Evelyn, Madeline, and Irene Swartley were born. Back then, natural multiple births were quite uncommon, triplets even more so, and identical triplets were considered a rarity. That they all survived birth was in itself somewhat miraculous, since the chances of miscarriage back then increased with each additional child. And while it was not unusual for at least one triplet to be born with health issues, all 3 Swartley girls were born completely healthy. So that the parents could tell them apart, the Swartleys tied different colored ribbons around the baby's wrists. And if you look closely at this photo, you can make out the ribbons on the baby's right wrists. In the early 1900s, the life expectancy of triplets was thought to be quite short, but all of the Swartley triplets thrived. I'm guessing that this photo was probably taken for the triplets' first birthday in 1903. And this one a couple of years later. Here's another studio photograph of the triplets. Notice that the girls are never smiling in these pictures, as was the norm for that time. Smiling for photographs, I just learned this, smiling for photographs didn't really become popular until the 1920s. How about that? Here are the triplets standing in the front row for their class photo in front of the Hatfield Borough Schoolhouse, maybe in second grade. The three girls looked so much alike that even their closest friends had difficulty telling them apart. This photo is from Christmas 1910 when the girls were 8 years old. I think without fail, in every photo, the girls are always lined up in the same order, left to right, Evelyn, Madeline, and Irene. Yeah. Here's a fancy studio photo of the triplets, I believe in their early teens. And I believe that this is the triplets with their graduation class posing on the steps of the Borough Schoolhouse, I think in 1918, when the girls would have been 16 years old. At that time, students graduated from Hatfield High School after the 10th grade. At that time, the triplets' graduation from the Hatfield Borough High School gave the school the distinction of being the only school in Montgomery County to ever graduate a class in which there were triplets. These next couple of pictures are from another photo studio session in 1919 to commemorate the triplets' 17th birthday. The girls had received a bit of attention a year earlier at the age of 16 when a Philadelphia newspaper wrote an article about them saying that the girls were attending a Philadelphia business college together. It reported that they seldom disagree on anything, in addition to looking identical, that they had identical tastes, they liked the same clothing, they all played the piano, and all enjoyed dancing. They were all enthusiastic about outdoor sports, and they all loved knitting. It went on to say that the girls could never bear to be separated for any length of time. Once, Madeline and Irene had gone to Quakertown, leaving Evelyn at home because she was ill. But Evelyn could not endure being separated from her sisters, so got out of bed, took the next train, and joined them in Quakertown. 2 years later, in 1920, the triplets again made the news in a Philadelphia newspaper. It seems that a doctor in a Philadelphia hospital was questioning the common conception that triplets had very short longevity. The newspaper reported to disprove the belief of some physicians that children born in triplicate rarely live over the age of 10. A prize contest was started at the hospital carnival last week, with the result that numerous sets of triplets have made knowledge of their existence. Yesterday, 4 sets appeared to claim the gold prizes offered. The first were the Misses Evelyn, Irene, and Madeline Swartley of Hatfield, who are 18 years old. The article went on to say that the Swartley girls went away empty-handed, though, because the contest was confined to Philadelphia triplets. Here's a photo of the girls taken in 1923 on the occasion of their 21st birthday. The triplets fell out of the limelight as they all grew into adulthood, got married, and raised families, living full lives. This photo is from the triplets' 58th birthday celebration in 1960. It would be Evelyn Swartley Wright's last birthday, as she died later that year. Irene Swartley Landis lived until 1983, and Madeline Swartley Miller lived the longest, dying in 1990 at the age of 88. There was some interest recently on why Hatfield streets had the names that they do. so I thought I would do a little lesson on that for you folks this evening. It's actually quite interesting just how much of Hatfield's history is contained in its street names. Most roads back in Hatfield's early days were not even given official names. In fact, if we look at, again at our 1848 map of Hatfield Township, only 2 roads are shown to have names: the Cowpath Road and 40-Foot Road. I'll speak on 40-Foot Road in a few minutes, but first I want to talk about Cowpath Road. Back in the late 1600s, there was a significant number of Welsh people who left their homeland for religious and cultural reasons and traveled to the New World, settling in Pennsylvania. And even before the lands of Hatfield Township were settled, these early Welsh settlers from neighboring townships would herd their cows along this path in order to get them to market, hence the name. This photo shows Hatfield's Fossbender men herding a cow, possibly on Cowpath Road, to their butcher shop on Main Street around 1910. Another Hatfield road, named for the early Welsh settlers, is, of course, Welsh Road, running along Hatfield's western border with Tulmenton and Upper Gwynedd townships. The earliest section of Welsh Road ran from what is now DeKalb Pike, or Route 202, all the way to what is now the Holmesburg section of Philadelphia, where there was a grist mill on the Pennypack Creek. This road was laid out by the Welsh of Upper Gwynedd, which had a rather large Welsh community, so that they could get their grain to the mill. The road was eventually extended north to connect with 40-Foot Road. To identify smaller roads in the area, Hatfield folks would simply reference them by who lived on them, and there are many older Hatfield roads that have received their name in this way. Coffle Road was named for the Jesse Coffle family that owned a 40-acre farm on the road from 1867 to 1926. Funk Road was named for John M. Funk, who had a 20-acre farm on the small dirt road connecting 40-Foot Road to Durstein Road. In 1885, Funk established a pork processing business on his farm, which has grown a bit over the years and is now known as Hatfield Quality Meats. Berge Road was named for the Horace Berge family that owned a 59-acre farm on that road from 1891 to the late 1900s. Clymer Road was named for John K. Clymer, who owned most of the land along that road in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And as you can see, John Clymer also at this time owned a large farm that would later be the Bishop Farm. Another Clymer, Frank M. Clymer, also owned 2 parcels in this area, totaling 114 acres. The road that is now, there's the Clymers. The road that is now Schwab Road was established sometime between 1871 and 1875 and was for a time simply known as the road between Hatfield and Lansdale. Around 1881, the road became known as Hawkins Road after a major landowner on the road, Henry Hawkins. Another large landowner on the road was Frederick Schwab Sr. After Schwab died in 1870, his son, Frederick Jr., continued to occupy the land. Henry Hawkins died in 1909, and his land was sold. Since the Schwab family outlasted the Hawkins family as landowners in that area, by the time the 1920 federal census was conducted, the road was referred to as Schwab's Road, the name that was then officially adopted by the township. Moyer's Road was named for Dr. Samuel C. Moyer, a prominent Lansdale physician who owned a large property on that road. Moyer's life ended tragically in 1920 when his horse and buggy were struck by a train at the Schwab Road crossing as he headed home from a late-night house call. Durstein Road was named for the Durstein family that owned a large 63-acre farm on the road from 1853 to 1922. And Lambert Street in Hatfield Borough is named for Dr. Jacob F. Lambert, Hatfield's first doctor. Dr. Lambert first bought a house in Hatfield in 1848 at the corner of Cowpath Road and Tulmenson Avenue. Dr. Lambert was killed on July 30th, 1874 while traveling in his wagon when his horse, for some unknown reason, went berserk and the doctor was thrown violently from his wagon, killing him. The doctor's family continued to own land in the borough into the early 1900s, and at one point his family owned most of the land from Tulmenson Avenue to Broad Street and between Main Street and Wayne Avenue. Eventually, the family began selling off the land, and many borough land deeds from that area reference them being a former Lambert lot. School Road in Hatfield Township was, of course, not named for any family on the road, but for the township school that was located there. The Hickory Grove Schoolhouse, named for the many hickory trees nearby, was built around 1852 at the intersection of School Road and East Vine Street. The old school was used until 1922, when the Joint Consolidated School building opened, and the old schoolhouse is now a residence. Notice on this 1877 map that School Road didn't connect with the Unionville Road at that time. A number of other early Hatfield roads were referenced simply by where the road would take you to, such as the road to Elroy, the road to Orvilla, the road to Line Lexington, the road to Treewigtown, the road to Unionville, and the road to Tulmenson. Speaking of Tulmenson Avenue, many folks probably don't realize that it is one of the oldest roads here in Hatfield, since it was once a part of 40-foot Road, which was laid out way back in 1760. The only older roads in Hatfield are the Kings Highway or Bethlehem Pike, Allentown Road, and Cowpath Road. 40-foot Road was the main road from Hatfield Township to Tulmenson Township. But then when West Broad Street was built around 1890 to create a more direct path from 40-foot Road to East Broad Street, Tulmenson Avenue became a lesser traveled side road. And what about 40-foot Road? 40-foot Road was officially opened through Hatfield Township in 1760, connecting the Skipback Road in Tulmenson Township to the Cowpath Road in Hatfield Township. The road received its name because of the fact that it was built soon after a new standard width of major roads was established at 40 feet wide. Now, although these roads were officially surveyed to a width of 40 feet, the actual cartway that was improved and maintained was always considerably smaller, usually 10 to 15 feet wide. It simply didn't make any sense at that time to pay to maintain wider roads for the occasional horse and wagon traffic of those days. Meanwhile, farmers with land along the route were still free to plant on the unimproved right-of-way, so crops often came right up to the edge of the narrow roadways. Of course, roads ending with pike, like Unionville Pike, Bethlehem Pike, and Hatfield Saturton Pike, were so named because they were once turnpiked roads. That is, travelers had to pay a fee to use them, which was then used to pay the expense of maintaining and improving the road. It can be assumed that streets with tree names like Cherry Street, Maple Avenue, Oak Avenue, Beech Street, Chestnut Street, Walnut Street, and Poplar Street were all named for a prominent type of tree that grew in those areas. Line Street, which wasn't built yet at the time of this 1848 map, would soon run on the right side of this map from Bethlehem Pike down to the Welsh Road, now Main Street, Lansdale, marking the southern boundary line between Hatfield and Montgomery townships. And on the northern edge of the township, on the left side, is the Township Line Road, separating Hatfield and Franconia townships. Now let's go back to that road that we talked about earlier that connected the Unionville Road to the Township Line Road. It now looks like this. The road came to be known in the 1900s as Richmond Road. Richmond Road was named for the Richmond Ring Company, the first business to establish a home on that road way back in the 1940s. That little family business still continues today on the road, though now known as Little Round Industries. Hendricks Road was just a small dirt lane that connected Cowpath Road to Funk's Road. This map shows the road in 1877, and as you can see, there were only a couple of farms along the entire length of the road. One of those farms, located all the way out towards Funk's Road, where Botch Nolan and his family more recently lived, was purchased in 1927 by Warren Hendricks, so the road became known as Hendricks Road. Hendricks Road didn't see much traffic on a day-to-day basis, but that changed each September after 1925 when the Montgomery County Fair came to town at the Hatfield Speedway. Fairgoers could access the fairgrounds by way of either 40-foot road or Hendricks Road. In 1940, Mr. Emil Berger decided to build a house on Hendricks Road, not far off of the Cowpath Road. And then September rolled around, and it was the county fair of all county fairs, with TV cowboy superstar Tom Mix as the main attraction. Traffic was often lined up bumper to bumper on Hendricks Road for hours as folks waited to get to the fair. Seeing all this traffic, Emil Berger decided that his road was not properly named, so he got out his hammer and a signpost and erected a new sign with Fairgrounds Road written on it. The name stuck, and the road bears that name to this day, a reminder of when the Montgomery County Fair at the Hatfield Speedway was the highlight of the year for many Hatfield residents. Werner Road, off of West Orvilla Road, was named for Frank Werner, the former owner of this stone mansion on Orvilla Road. Frank Werner, owner of the Werner Foundry in Lansdale, purchased the 24-acre property in 1922. During his ownership, he planned for the subdivision of much of his land, and so gave one of the streets in the new development his name. He sold the property in the early 1950s, and it was soon developed. Werner Road, Rose Lane, and Dogwood Lane were all formerly part of the Werner tract, and the mansion still stands out there on Orvilla Road. Going down Orvilla Road a bit towards the Cowpath, this is a 1938 aerial photo of that area. That's Cowpath Road going up through the top right corner. The railroad and trolley tracks are running up the left, and Orvilla Road is running between Cowpath and the railroad. Around 1763, a small two-story log cabin was built at the end of a narrow 300-yard dirt lane. The square log cabin, reportedly 28 feet by 28 feet in size, sat back there with a pear tree and several apple trees around it. The old log cabin stood there on the land for 165 years before it burned to the ground in 1928. About 12 years later, in the early 1940s, the land there started to be developed, and the narrow dirt lane that led back to the old log cabin became Cabin Road, which now connects Orvilla Road to Cindy Lane. Over in the village of Calmer, Jenkins Avenue off of Walnut Street was likely named to honor Cumley L. Jenkins, Calmer's very first postmaster, appointed in 1871. This is a 1942 photo showing the dedication of the new Calmer Firehouse on Walnut Street. That small dirt road to the left of the station is Jenkins Avenue. The road was, until not too long ago, a small rustic dead-end road, but has been much improved in recent years. In the second half of the 20th century, streets were often given names with no particular historical relevance, but simply a generic name selected at the whim of the developer or municipality. But let's look at some newer Hatfield street names that do have a historical connection. While not having a local historical connection, a number of Hatfield streets pay tribute to former U.S. presidents. In the development off of Fairgrounds and Elroy Road, there are Washington Lane, Adams Drive, Grant Avenue, Truman Drive, and Ford Drive. I'm not sure how Wendy Way got snuck in there, but in the borough are Garfield Avenue and Roosevelt Avenue, and then there is also a Roosevelt Boulevard in the township off of Cowpath Road. So our presidents are well represented here in Hatfield. Jean Drive at the end of West School Street in Hatfield Borough was named in honor of Jean Flossdorf, wife of former borough mayor Herbert Flossdorf. The Flossdorfs lived at the end of West School Street for many years and then received a Jean Drive address when the new road was built. When the Fairfield community was built in the township some years later, Jean Drive was continued into the development, although not connected. Walter Stewart purchased a 48-acre farm off of Line Lexington Road back in 1923. That's Line Lexington Road along the right, and if you are familiar with the road, you'll recognize the sharp bends in the road seen there. When the Stewart family decided to develop a part of their farm in the late 70s, they named the main road that wound through the new community Stewart Drive to honor the legacy of that property. A Stewart family member continues to live in the old farmhouse there on the 26-acre farm, making it 99 years that the Stewarts have owned this farm. How about Wimbledon Lane and, I like this one, Tennis Court, located off of Moyers Road. I wonder how many people remember this one, but some long-timers may recall that from around 1972 to around 1900, there was there we go. There was an indoor tennis club building that stood back in the area, which at that time was all open fields. These roads were apparently named to commemorate the tennis club's brief place in Hatfield's history. Right on the other side of Moyers Road, we have Thomas Penn Avenue, which was named for the son of William Penn, the founder of Pennsylvania. And then there's Colonel Philip Reed Drive. This one is a bit of a puzzle. You see, Lieutenant Colonel Jacob Reed was Hatfield's most notable patriot during the American Revolution. He was a prized target during the war and narrowly escaped death on several occasions. Colonel Jacob Reed's father was Philip Reed, but he was too old to have even served as a soldier in the Revolution. Colonel Jacob Reed's son, also named Philip, was a captain placed in command of the Hatfield militia. So was this street really named to honor Captain Philip Reed, whose military service was rather unremarkable, and they got his rank incorrect? It seems to me more likely that it was an attempt to honor the very noteworthy military service of Hatfield's Lieutenant Colonel Jacob Reed, and they just got the name wrong. Oops. Chapman Circle, one of the township's newer streets up at Cowpath and Lenhart Road, near the Fortuna train station, was named to honor the memory of Hatfield's William J. Chapman. Bill grew up in Hatfield, served as a fireman with the Hatfield Volunteer Fire Company, and later joined the Hatfield Township Police Department. Officer Bill Chapman was a beloved member of the Hatfield Township Police Department for 15 years before developing a serious illness which caused his death in 2005. Colonial Drive off of Oak Park Road near Coffle Road and Squirrel Lane acknowledges the old colonial era Wright Conspiracy House located there, which is the oldest house in all of Hatfield. Hertford Drive off of Elroy Road may be an homage to Hertfordshire, England, where the village of Hatfield is located, believed to be Hatfield Township's namesake. And the quiet Lenape Drive off of North Broad Street remembers the Lenape Indians that once inhabited this area. Stephanie Court off of Talmenson Avenue in the borough is said to have apparently been named for the former borough manager, Stephanie Tioli. And the new Clemens Road in Hatfield Township was, of course, named for the Clemens family that operates the nearby Hatfield Quality Meats. General Forest Drive off of Lenhart Road was reportedly named for former longtime Hatfield Township Commissioner William Forrest. Although Bill Forrest was, of course, never a military general, he had a reputation for closely watching over Hatfield Township projects to ensure that they were done correctly, and hence the name. Now I have two more older Hatfield roads that should have been earlier in the program, but I forgot about them and I throw them in here, so they're a little bit out of order. And those two roads are Lenhart Road, which was named for John Lenhart, who in 1892 purchased the large 132-acre farm of Philip Theobald that was on that road. And the last street, this one I just learned about myself. Some of you may recognize this building on North Broad Street on the edge of Hatfield Township as the Ophthalmic Associates building, formerly the Clemens Supermarket building. The street to the left of the building is Hatfield Street and is the boundary between Hatfield Borough and Hatfield Township. Now the street is named Hatfield Street, and I always assumed that its name had to do with it marking the Hatfield Township border. And then while looking at this 1893 map, where is it? Oh no! Here it comes. While I was looking at this 1893 map, I learned that the street ran along a 20-acre property once owned by a Mr. H.B. Hatfield. So I'm quite certain that the street received its name because of the property that it ran along. So as you can see, there is a lot of great history told by Hatfield street names, and I hope that you found it interesting. I talked briefly already about the Frank Werner Mansion, but I thought I would expound a bit on the building. I imagine that many of you have driven by this unusual, elegant-looking house and wondered, as I did for many years, what is the story behind that house? It is so unusual that it must have a story, and it does. Henry Kratz Kindig was born in 1839 to John and Elizabeth Kindig, seen here, on the family farm in the Orvilla section of Hatfield Township. It is believed that Henry Kindig was born in this farmhouse at 244 West Orvilla Road, over near the Plains Mennonite Meeting House. Some of you may remember that this building was not too long ago known as the John Kindig Bed and Breakfast. As a boy, Henry Kindig traveled to Philadelphia to learn the grocery business. In 1859, at the age of 20, Henry married 19-year-old Sophia Anders, and they soon started a family. Kindig moved to Philadelphia, and in 1868, at the age of 29, established his own wholesale grocery business under the name H.K. Kindig and Company, located at 147 Market Street, seen here. He went on to become a widely known, very successful, well-to-do Philadelphia businessman. In 1874, at the age of 35, Henry Kindig bought his father's Orvilla Road farm the place of his birth, and then sold it 2 years later in 1876. In 1887, Henry's wife Sophia, the mother of his 8 children, died at the age of 46. 2 years later, in 1889, Henry remarried to Anna Marie Wagner. Also in 1889, he bought back his birthplace, Orvilla Farm, to keep as a summer residence where he could escape the heat of the city. And there's his summer home property shown on this 1893 map. Perhaps the old homestead proved to be too small for him, or perhaps Kindig felt that a man of his stature deserved a more impressive summer house. But whatever the reason, Kindig soon decided he wanted to build a new summer home. Henry Kindig apparently felt quite a connection to the little village of his birth, because in 1894, he bought a 24-acre wooded property just down the road from the widow of Isaac Moyer. It was here on this property between Coffle Road and the railroad that he would build a new summer home. He hired famous Lansdale architect Milton Bean, known for his elegant designs, which often included turrets, to design the new summer home. And elegant it was, with its construction of quarried stone and, of course, a turret. It was one of the most interesting and unique houses in Hatfield, described in Alabach's 1944 history book as the mansion in the woods. Interestingly, there were no fireplaces included in the construction of the house, so it seems it was designed solely for summer use. An attractive carriage house, also built of quarried stone, was constructed next to the house. Henry Kindig suffered a paralytic stroke in September 1908 and died a few days later in his beautiful summer home at the age of 69. The Kindig family kept the house another 14 years before selling to Frank Werner in 1922. As mentioned previously, at some point Werner decided to develop much of his land, creating Werner Road, Rose Lane, and Dogwood Lane. He then sold the house and carriage house, now on 2.3 acres, to Harold Michener around 1950. In the early 1970s, the Micheners subdivided the carriage house property from the main house property, Harold Michener Jr. receiving the carriage house and his mother, Sarah Michener, retaining the house. The old house was sold 2 more times since then, in 1993 and then in July 2020 to the 5th owners of the old Kindig Mansion in its 128-year history. And now you know the story behind the Orvilla Road Mansion in the woods. Staying in the village of Orvilla just a little bit longer, we'll move up the road a bit, just on the other side of Coffle Road. Some of you long-timers may remember the Lewis's Orvilla store that operated during the 1940s and 1950s. The building that you see there on the right was not the store, but the house next to the store. And here's what that house looks like today. And the store was located on this side of the house in the open area there. The store business had its start as an ice cream stand on an adjoining property back around 1927. The ice cream business then became a grocery and moved around the neighborhood in the front rooms of several different houses, as was not unusual back in those days. In the late 30s, Martin, known as Marty, and Viola Fisher built this building in which to operate the store. Although the building appeared to be made of brick, it was actually wood construction with imitation brick asphalt siding. This is Marty Fisher in front of his new store around 1943. In June 1945, what's going on there? David Lewis and his wife Dorothy Lewis bought the store And the Lewises lived next door to the store in that house that you see there on the right. Customers who purchased popsicles or other ice cream products at the store had a tendency to throw the trash near, but not in, the trash basket that sat just outside the door of the store, prompting the Lewises to post a prominent sign over the trash basket, "In it, not at it," as you can see there on the left. This is David and Dorothy Lewis with their young son, David Jr., sitting in front of the store around 1947. At some point, like many small mom-and-pop stores, the Orvilla store joined the Unity Frankfurt Association of Grocery Stores. A prominent feature in the Orvilla store was a row of glass-top pretzel cans which were arrayed in front of the meat counter. The cans were frequently used as seats by neighbors who came to exchange news and conversation. At times, it seemed like the store was more of a gathering place for neighbors than a place of business. This photo shows second son Donald Lewis sitting on the step of the store, and the identity of the woman is unknown, unfortunately. Here's a 1947 photo showing Donald and David Jr. tending to the Christmas trees being sold in front of the store. Inside the store on the counter was a penny gumball machine which contained one green and yellow striped gumball. The lucky patron to get this gumball would win a cash prize, maybe 50 cents or $1. However, state troopers decided this was an illegal gambling operation and made the Lewises discontinue offering the prize money. Here's another photo of Donald and David Jr. now standing in front of the store's Christmas display with Santa promoting the sale of Coca-Cola. To supplement the store business, the Lewises also raised, killed, defeathered, gutted, and sold chickens through the store. And in the final year or two that the store was in operation, to try to keep business afloat, the Lewises also made and sold sandwiches at the store. The opening around 1958 of the new Acme store, not too far away on the edge of Lansdale, brought about the quick demise of the Orvilla Village Unity Frankfurt store. By January 1967, both David and Dorothy Lewis had died, and their home and the vacant store were soon sold. The store building was not long after demolished, although the frugal property owner reportedly took great care in salvaging reusable rusty nails from the rubble for reuse. Today you can play chess live over the internet with people anywhere in the world. Back in 1940, it wasn't that easy or that quick. One Hatfield Borough resident, Mr. Walter Hall, played chess with someone in Cuba by mail. On this postcard, his opponent wrote, "I am really glad to have chosen the French defense, as it is one of your preferred ones. I hope this is going to make the game very interesting. I am studying very hard the French defense, and this quarterly section is giving me a splendid opportunity as I am playing in all three games as black, a French defense in a different variation each time. I wish you success, but I guarantee a tough time." Imagine games like that went pretty slowly back then, waiting for the mail to go through. Now, some history on Hatfield's train stations that I hope you'll find interesting. In the 1800s, the farmers of Hatfield Township, like much of Montgomery County, benefited from its close proximity to the large and growing city of Philadelphia and its high demand for food products. But travel to and from the city was a long process back in the days of horse and wagons, especially in rainy weather when the dirt roads became filled with muddy ruts and were sometimes untravelable. So it was very good news for the farmers of Hatfield when around 1850 talks began on building a railroad line to run from Philadelphia to New York, and it would pass right through the open fields of Hatfield Township. The railroad was never completed to New York, but on July 7th, 1857, The North Penn Railroad was finally finished from Philadelphia to Bethlehem, with a spur route going to Doylestown. And there were 3 stations placed in Hatfield Township, all at major road crossings. One station was placed on the very southern edge of Hatfield Township at the Welsh Road crossing. This was also where the spur line originated that went to Doylestown. This station was named Lansdale after railroad survey engineer Philip Lansdale Fox. Another station, where are you? Well, there is another station up there somewhere in Calmer. Is it there? Okay. Another station was placed almost at the very, where am I here? Another station was placed almost in the center, yes. Okay. In the center of Hatfield Township at the Cowpath Road crossing. And this station was named Hatfield. The third station was placed on the Doylestown spur at the Bethlehem Pike crossing and was named Line Lexington, after the village that was 1.5 miles to the north. Now, with quick, easy access to Philadelphia by railroad, businesses soon started to locate in the rural areas outside of the city. The 3 stations in Hatfield Township were a great advantage to the farmers of Hatfield, allowing farm products to reach the city quickly and cheaply. People also began to build and settle in the area of these stations, drawn by the convenience of easy access to public transportation. And soon, villages were growing around each station. The fastest growth, there it is, the fastest growth occurred in the village around the Lansdale station. So fast, in fact, that in 1872, the villagers decided to petition the courts to be incorporated as a borough. The petition was granted, Lansdale Borough was formed, and Hatfield Township lost its southern corner. The village also grew around the Line Lexington train station. As the village grew, it was decided that it needed a different name to avoid confusion with the village of Line Lexington, 1.5 miles away. In January 1871, a post office was established in the village and named Jenkins Post Office, after the first postmaster, Comely L. Jenkins. 6 months later, however, the post office was renamed Ainsworth, perhaps after a village hotel owner. But that didn't last long either. 2 weeks later, both the post office and the train station were renamed Calmer. And this is an early 1900s photo of the Calmer train station. There's another early 1900s, somewhat out of focus photo of the station. And here we're looking north along the track towards the County Line Road. And for this photo, we are on the other side of the station looking south towards the Bethlehem Pike crossing. And it looks like a northbound steam engine is headed towards us. Here's a group of dressed up men apparently waiting for their train. Notice that at this time, the Calmer post office was also located in the train station. You can see the post office sign hanging underneath the Calmer sign. It's likely that the telegraph office was also located in the station at this time. Telegraph offices were often located in the train station because the telegraph lines could easily follow the railroad tracks from town to town. Most of the train station agents were also skilled telegraph operators, and it was the primary way that they used to communicate with the railroad office. There's another nice picture of the Calmer station, this one from 1910, looking northward toward the County Line Road. And this would be a more recent photo of a newer station, although this station has also now been replaced. As with the Lansdale and Calmer stations, people also began to build and settle around the Hatfield station at the Cowpath Road crossing. This area came to be known as the village of Hatfield Center. Notice on this 1871 map that the area just north of Hatfield Center Village was totally undeveloped. This changed 2 years later in 1873 when land speculator Joseph Proctor bought most of the land in that area and then, in a rather shrewd business deal, offered to sell 2.5 acres of this land to the railroad for $1. In return, Proctor asked only that the Hatfield Railroad Station be moved from its location at Cowpath Road north to the new railroad property. The railroad accepted Proctor's offer and the station was moved. Mr. Proctor knew that the relocated station would dramatically increase the value of the rest of his land. He subdivided this land, and as you can see from this 1877 map, he had little trouble selling his lots that were now so convenient to the train station. The village that developed around the relocated station became known as Upper Hatfield, while the village of Hatfield Center became known as Lower Hatfield. And in 1898, Upper and Lower Hatfield would join together to become Hatfield Borough. This 1907 photo shows the train station at its new location in Upper Hatfield with the George S. Snyder feed mill in the background. And here's a closer look at the original Hatfield train station. By 1913, the story goes, some of the borough's residents felt that the Hatfield station, which was now over 50 years old, was just too small and that Hatfield deserved a bigger station. After all, Lansdale had gotten a nice new station 11 years earlier. Why shouldn't Hatfield have a big new station? So apparently, word went out that should there be a fire at the old station, that no one should work too hard to put it out. And when you know it, a mysterious fire did occur at the station one night. However, one well-meaning resident who apparently not received word quickly extinguished it before any damage could be done. But lo and behold, in July 1913, another mysterious fire occurred, this time destroying the small wood frame station. Interestingly, the records of the Hatfield Volunteer Fire Company, which was formed 3 years earlier in 1910, shows no record of even being called to the blaze. Anyway, a nice new modern brick station was soon constructed to replace the destroyed station. The station continued to serve commuters until July 26, 1981, when passenger service on the Lansdale to Bethlehem branch was discontinued. One station that is long gone now is the Orvilla station, located at the Orvilla Road crossing in the village of Orvilla that I've talked so much about this evening. Unlike the three main stations that were established in 1857 when the rail line opened, this station was added later around 1890, probably after the village had grown enough to warrant adding a stop there. How long the station operated is not known, but it has been long gone now, and if anybody remembers the Orvilla station, let us know. Give us some idea of how long it operated. Two smaller stations still operate in Hatfield, both on the Doylestown branch. It was around 1888 that a stop was added between the Lansdale and Commerce stations on that line. An 1893 map of Hatfield depicts the Fortuna station as being located on a small piece of ground between Walnut Street and the train tracks approximately 800 feet east of the Walnut Street crossing. And here's a closer look at that area. The story of the naming of this station is a rather interesting one itself. It seems that in the late 1880s, a Reading Railroad train struck and killed a cow near the Cowpath Road crossing. The cow's owner felt that the railroad was at fault since the faster train threatened the slowly moving cows, and in an out-of-court settlement, the railroad agreed to name the nearby station after the deceased cow, Fortuna. There you go. At some time, exactly when is not known, but the Fortuna station was moved eastward to its current location at the Cowpath Road crossing. The station was, in its early years, a flag stop station. That is, the train would not stop unless there was a passenger to get on or let off. If you wanted the train to stop and pick you up, you had to pull down the handle on the signal tower, seen in this photo to the left of the station, to raise the signal flag up top. The engineer would see the flag and know to stop for a passenger. After the passenger boarded the train, the conductor would get off and reset the signal. The old Fortuna station building continued to serve passengers until 2017, when sadly, at least for history lovers, probably not so much for passengers, the old wooden station was removed and replaced by a modern train platform and shelter. Our last Hatfield train station is often forgotten about, the Link Belt Station. The Link Belt Station was added to the Doylestown branch back in 1952 to service the employees of the new Link Belt plant at Walnut Street and County Line Road. And it wasn't so much a train station as a train stop. As you can see in this 1958 photo, there was no structure there in the early years. That is Walnut Street